joke. As much as we would like to go back to the old normal, some things would not just go back to normal. That's something we need to adapt to. So I'm going to fire the first shot at Mr. Idowu. How has this been for you? What new skills are you deploying, okay, for stimulating innovation? Either on a personal note, because I've had somebody said, right now you've got to disrupt yourself, okay, because you've been disrupted by COVID. So what are you bringing to bear? What's new skills in terms of innovation and how you're leading innovation as a leader in the corporate world?
Thank you, Aki. Let me first of all say thank you for having me again, and it's good to share the space with Professor Brand. And then the second thing I'd like to say is I'm not sure if any skill is exactly new, or maybe we're paying more attention in deploying certain skills more in this context than we probably did in the past. They may have been used sparingly, but this period, a few things have come to the fore more. The first one that comes to my mind is a lot more empathy. When this broke, as soon as it happened in Wuhan, and I'm going to speak as somebody who wears about 3 hats almost simultaneously. I have a day job, which is what you spoke about at Pin Foundation, but I'm also a church minister. I'm an ordained pastor, and I'm a leadership coach and get involved in a lot of mentoring. And the joke, my other nickname is serial mentor. So when I finish my day job in the evening, I share that with my family as well as what I do pastoring. And sometimes the boundaries collapse because some emergency might happen in the course of the day, and you've got to use your break time to go attend to things and stuff like that. But what it became obvious was we needed to deploy a lot more empathy at this period. And I looked at my day job, our leadership team of about 13 individuals. You found out about 3/4 of us had our families outside our work locations. And so at the advent of the pandemic, all kinds of things are going through people. You're trying to take care of yourself in your work location, but you're also caring for your loved ones in other places. And half of that number had their family members outside the country. So you can't just up and get off in a minute. Therefore, everybody they were all at different places in their response to the pandemic, and with all the fake news, all manner of news, they're trying to sort out what's true, what's fake. So a lot more empathy and paying more attention to how people were feeling, what was going through their minds. And so you couldn't really start figuring and focusing on work. It was now about people management, people's emotions. You don't want them to have what some people have called emotion contagions or contagion emotions, so that people don't run around. And you want to help channel their focus from fear into hope. So people were at varying levels. Then my own family situation, we are spread over 3 locations. I was getting ready to go on vacation to join my children in the UK, and suddenly became clear that, okay, my boss and colleague was just returning to the country. He was going to go into 14-day isolation. That meant my vacation plans were put on hold. I got to restructure that to provide leadership on the ground. Family in 3 locations. So I just told my wife, you got to move real quickly and go before a lockdown happens and you can't fly anymore while I stayed back. So it was empathy dealing with people at varying levels, whether on the home front or at work or in church, because people reacted to this in different ways. And with my home location too, we have domestic staff who live in. You had to decide that they had to go home and be with their families while you just lock up your main home. And I keep 2 dogs, and I was off in another location working. My dogs were in a different location, and you couldn't have the domestic staff stay back. So you had to incur the extra cost of boarding the dogs at a kennel, but being concerned about your domestic staff and having them stay with their family members and take care of that. So that was one key skill that needed to come in, and we needed to pay more attention. The other aspect was, at this point, your ability to convene had to become stronger. I have my team dispersed. 3/4 of my team, my direct reports, are also in a different location from me. I'm based in Abuja. 3 out of my 4 direct reports and their respective teams are based in the field, Port Harcourt and Warri, with only one with me in Abuja. So it was a time that you had to do a lot more convening, a lot more, bringing all the teams together to brainstorm and take things on a common front rather than be them operating in individual. A few months earlier, we had done some restructuring that put all the program teams to report to me and the business development function. So it was as if by providence, we already had some opportunity to have these people herding together, but it became more needful at the break of the pandemic for us to begin to drive progress, to think about various things. Not to take too much time, but the other thing is critical thinking had to come to the fore more than ever before. Not that we've not always really critically thought of things, but at this point in time, I had to get into the role of really challenging my team members' assumptions and getting them to disengage from their autopilot, take off the autopilot gear and really get them to challenge their assumptions. Because again, a number of my team members at work and at church, they come from different backgrounds, but at work, I bring a private sector and a public sector perspective, while most of my other folks are largely not-for-profit guys. So there are a few other things you had to challenge at that point. Not to monopolize the time or get long-winded, I'll leave it at that. I'll be glad to hear what Prof has to say to the same question.
Wow. Thank you very much. And you know, while you are sharing, you mentioned two key words that I am looking at now with regards to innovation. Critical thinking, empathy. And Prof, I'm coming to you now. Remember those few years ago, I was sitting in your class in the design thinking class, right? I've done a couple of design thinking workshops also in the past few years. Design thinking starts with empathy, right? And that is something that, you know, as we think about innovation, what do you think innovative leadership or leading innovation in these times, how do we bring all of that together? Over to you, Prof.
Yeah, well, thank you, Dr. Oke, and it's just wonderful to be here with you, and I really appreciated Mr. Idowu's remarks. He clearly does wear probably more than three hats, actually, and I think he has some ideal combinations there as a corporate leader of networked operations, you know, around the world, but also a pastor. That's almost an ideal combination in this time, and I agree with him. The importance of empathy, and you know, just the extra. I mean, to be honest with you, the extra emotional burden of trying to sort facts, you know, from speculation adds an additional burden, because you know you want to protect family and friends and your workers, co-workers, colleagues, and there's always in the back of your mind this possibility of a life-threatening illness, and so trying to understand what the best scientific information available from the fake news, that's just an added burden that we, none of us typically have. So I think, and differences of opinion about the responses to this pandemic from governments, different policy and so forth. I mean, even within my social circle, there are families that have been divided over this because, some are, support wearing masks and social distancing and, and following all the restrictions and the guidelines, and others think, well, they're destroying the economy, they're destroying people's lives, we have to stand up and take back our freedoms, and so it's been very divisive, and I realize that in some parts of the world there are many more challenges based on unrest and oppression and so forth than just a virus. But this can be very challenging, on the personal front, and of course it's difficult to divorce that from your corporate life. But yeah, I think empathy is a very, very critical skill. And another thing, all of us, many people are on Zoom I had a colleague, Mark Gilbreth. He runs a company called Liquid Space in the Silicon Valley area here in the United States. And it's a software platform that allows you to schedule office space either within your own headquarters or around the world. But anyway, he invited me to participate in an event a few weeks ago, and he said, if you haven't already suffered death by 1,000 webinars, I would invite you to join this discussion. So, Zoom it's a useful platform. There are other platforms, Teams. I think Microsoft has something called Teams, but these also add to the stress level because it's more difficult to monitor facial expressions and people's tone of voice, and there's many cues that we unconsciously rely on to improve the quality of our communication with other people. And some of those are filtered out in this kind of an online platform, and that just after a day full of meetings, looking at a screen, it's taxing. So that's another challenge that we face. So yeah, empathy, very, very critical. And I know myself, I'm trying to learn a lot more about Zoom. I mean, I have a few, I still am not really versatile with all of the breakout rooms and the way you can set all of those things up. But there's a lot of tools and bells and whistles in Zoom. I'm trying to master some of those. Online is, almost mandatory right now. But it does, the positive, I guess, for that is it does remind you that, anyone in the world is, a FaceTime chat away, or a WhatsApp or a Zoom or a phone call, or, it really is a networked world. And probably there are some opportunities there that we need to explore further. So that critical thinking piece is very important.